G'day, in this lesson we'll build the domain layer for authors. In the previous lesson, when we built the server side for books, we've used the ABP infrastructure to easily build some services. We used the CRUD app service base class instead of manually developing an application service for standard create, read, update and delete operations. We also used generic repositories to completely automate the database layer. For authors, we'll do some things manually to show you how you can do it in case you need to. We will implement some domain-driven design (DDD) best practices. The development will be done layer by layer to concentrate on an individual layer one at a time. In a real project, you will develop your application feature by feature as done in the previous lessons when we were creating the book management features. In this way, we will experience both approaches. Let's create an authors folder in the domain project and add an author class and replace its contents with the following code. The authors entity is inherited from full audited aggregate root of type GUID, which makes the entity soft delete. That means when you delete it from the database, it doesn't actually get deleted, it's just marked as deleted, with all the auditing properties that come with it. Notice the private setter for the name property, which restricts to set this property from outside this class. There are two ways of setting the name in both cases. The first is we validate the name in the constructor while creating a new author. And the second is using the change name method to update the name later. The constructor and the change method both are internal. These methods can only be used in the domain layer. Using the author manager, that will be explained later. The check class used in the set name method is an ABP utility class to help. While checking methods arguments, it throws argument exception on an invalid case. The author constants is a simple class that is located under the authors folder of the domain's shared project. Let's create this class and replace its contents with the following code. We will reuse this class when we create the DTOs for the author entity. The author entity we just created has the author constructor and change name methods, which are both internal, so we can use them only in the domain layer. Let's create an author manager class in the authors folder of the domain project and replace its contents with the following code, which will call the author constructor and the change name methods. The author manager forces us to create an author and change name of an author in a controlled way. The application layer will be introduced later, and we will use these methods so that we don't have to call on the author's entity directly, as methods and properties will not be accessible from the application layer. Do not introduce domain services methods unless they are really needed and perform some core business rules. For this case, we needed this service to be able to force the unique name constraint. Both methods check if there is already an author with the given name and throws a special business exception. Let's create an author already exists exception class defined in the domain project in the authors folder, and we will replace its contents with the following code. Business exception is a special exception type. It is good practice to throw domain related exceptions when needed, because these exceptions will be automatically handled by the ABP framework. In addition, these exceptions can easily be localized using the with data method, which is used to provide additional data to the exception object. That later will be used on the localization message or some other purpose. Let's open the bookstore domain error codes in the domain shared project and change its contents with the following code. This is a unique string which represents the error code thrown by the application and can be handled by client exceptions. For users, you'll probably want to localize it. Let's open the localization /bookstore/en.json inside the domain shared project and add the following English translation key for the error code. Whenever we throw an author already exists exception, the end user will see this message on the UI. The author manager injects the author repository, so we'll need to define this. Let's create a new interface in the authors folder in the acme.bookstore.domain project and replace its contents with the following code. The author repository extends the standard repository of author entity of the type GUID interface. So all the standard repository methods will also be available for the author repository. We have implemented find by name async, which is used in the author manager to query an author by name. We've also created a get list async, which will be used in the application layer to get a list of authors, which is sorted and filtered to show on the UI. Both of these methods might seem unnecessary since the standard repositories are already queryable, and you can directly use them instead of defining such custom methods. You are absolutely right, and you would use them just like so in a real application. However, for this learning lesson, it was useful to explain how to create custom repository methods when you really need them. In this lesson, we implemented the domain layer of the author's functionality of the bookstore application. The main files created and updated in this lesson were author already exists exception, author manager, author repository, author constants, and bookstore domain error codes. And of course, the en.json for our English translation keys for the error code. Join me in the next lesson where we will create the database integration for authors.